Just a little backstory. At mid-semester flex last semester, I actually presented at Laney about my dissertation. And Chelsea's in the room, so she can verify this. I did get an email from Marlon Chelsea saying, hey, can you present again? And I thought about a couple research projects that I did when I was in grad school, and I sent an idea to them. And the response I got, and I would say it was within about 2 minutes, was actually, we'd like you to talk about your podcast. So that's how we got here today. And really, along the way, we're going to kind of tell the story of the podcast and how it's come along and some characteristics of it. But one thing, absolutely, if we're going to talk about this podcast, I have to do is play the way we start every one. So this is actually the opening music. Starting at episode 3, we've done 86 so far. This is the opening song to every podcast. And it is actually a trivia question for later in the presentation to see if anybody knows it. So we'll go ahead and go with that. Now, given the very small group we have today, just along the way, if you have questions, please feel free to just chime in. We'll consider this more presentation than discussion than presentation today. So I guess every story starts with a beginning. And I have this photo up because on the left side of the photo is former Laney Public Information Officer Larena Baldazo. And back in 2022, as the Public Information Officer, she came to me and said there's this conference. She had never gone to a conference as an employee here at Laney. Which is the California Community College Public Relations Organization, CC Pro. And she asked if she could go to the conference. And just without even really thinking about it, I just said, yes, sure, go, please, and come back and tell us some stuff. So that was the first request. And then the second request that she came back with was, while I was at the conference, I heard about college presidents who do podcasts. Would you consider doing one? And to that, I said yes as well. So long story short, 4 weeks later, we had, thanks to collaboration with Felicia Bridges over at KGPC 96.9 FM in Oakland, the blowtorch of Oakland, right, FM radio. We had the president's desk, which actually Lorena came up with the name for it. And we got started. And the picture you see here is actually episode number 1, which aired on May 5th, 2022. So it's kind of funny because, as I mentioned, there were 86 episodes when Lorena and I got started, and Felicia was in the control room at the time. But there's some things that have kind of stayed throughout, and I'm just going to talk about a couple things. First of all, and this, I have to give Lorena credit for this. She created a template script for the show. And thanks to the wonderful thing, I don't say a lot of wonderful things about Office 365, but one great thing about Word and 365 is you can have people come in and make edits, make changes, and what we did was we would share the script with our guests so that if they wanted to say, hey, I'd like to talk about this or ask me about that, they could do that. Felicia always also has access and things like that. So we kind of had a template script with an open, and then we had things we followed, and it changed and grew over the years. But really, from the original 30-minute format to the 1-hour format we have now, a lot of it is pretty much still the same, even from episode 1. And maybe you could talk a little bit about, if you're doing a podcast, how we open a little bit.
So,
because I know in the beginning you said to me, Rudy, don't change it, keep it, it's good.
yeah, right. So it's just kind of good to lead in and set up your show. So the way Rudy starts the show is with me just saying, hey, welcome to the president's desk, giving the title and kind of giving an overview. And then Rudy chimes in, takes over, and he tells, he introduces the guest. We have a little small talk. So it's
Yeah.
It's a nice little setup for the overall, not only theme of the show, but I guess the pace of it as well.
Yeah, and really at the beginning, what I often do is, just because I know it's going to be, it can be, people can access it on their own time. I mentioned the many outlets we have. It's available on radio. It's seen on TV on Sundays, on Peralta TV, which goes to cable TV throughout the area. We have a YouTube channel. So I mentioned all those things. And then also I give a shout out to social media, all those outlets, just because, as you'll see, they've actually been a very big supporter. Another thing that's kind of endured has been our audience. From the beginning, Lorena and I decided it would be students and whoever else is listening. That was kind of the format. And along the way, I'll talk about why that's been so important. Felicia referenced this. One of the things we always have, and this goes back to some of my experience as a graduate student when I did a dissertation and I had to do interviews of people and record those interviews, which can naturally be vexing, is I always start with small talk. We always, and I mean, I've had a bunch of ridiculous topics and some casual ones and some how are yous and I heard this on the radio or, you know, just kind of stuff like that. Again, the whole idea of this is, this particular show is never going to be confused with a political fire starter show, investigative reporting, TMZ. And no, it's never going to be confused with any of that. It's really just an informative show. And really having our guests be as relaxed as possible and kind of, you know the microphones are there, but not be afraid of them. We don't do the show live, which means that, and this has saved me many times, if you mess up on air, we can go back and fix it. So, which is good. So that's something that's good. I think a big piece of this story, the show has been people telling stories. I just think, tell us what happened. What happened here? So that's what happened. And then again, thinking about the why of this show, it being for students and it being about Laney, and it's grown to also be about Peralta. One of the things that has happened throughout the show, if you listen to any of the 86 episodes, we throw spotlights on areas of Laney College, areas of the other 3 colleges, the district office, community partners, and I've had a number of them on the show as well. And it's really kind of a chance to put a spotlight on parts of the campus. So those are some things that if you listen to episode 1 and then I'll go all the way to episode 86, you'll find all these things are kind of constants. Like I said, the theme of this was that there have been a lot of learning moments. And from this piece, the first lesson that was reinforced with me is that when you're working with people or you're providing leadership, whether it's as a president, managing a radio station, teaching a class, helping students, trust and empowerment are big things. Had I said, well, conference, I don't know, or podcast, I've never done a podcast. Had I done those things, none of this would have ever happened. And I think because you have trust and you empower people, I think those are things that really, that was a lesson that really was reinforced for me from the get-go. All right, well, that I should have called this lesson number 2, that the only sure thing is change. Lorena, about 6 months in, moved on. She transitioned to another career opportunity. And so a lot of what happened was, wow, okay, what do we do now? Because half of the show isn't there anymore. And not only that, a lot of the creative force behind it isn't there anymore. And also, and you're probably gathering this as we talk, I mean, I'm okay to listen to, but just my voice is not the greatest one all the time. So, so really, I had to look no further than the other side of the glass, because along the way, what was happening in these first few episodes is that I was learning a lot, but I wasn't just learning a lot from Lorena. I was also learning an incredible amount from Felicia. And so one day I just came to Felicia and I said, you substitute co-hosted one day, it went fine. Can you keep going? And I thought this would be good because, and Felicia, you'll talk about your background in a minute. Felicia's got a broadcasting background. Felicia's done a lot of radio. And as I've learned, she's also done simulcast studio. She's versed in that. And along the way, I really got a lot of expertise on how to sound when a microphone is on. And Felicia, to a great degree, has been my teacher and shepherd and corrector of mistakes along the way. And the two that come to mind the most, and two that I actually carry with me even when I'm not on air now, is that in my spoken register of English, one of my habits is I start almost every sentence with a conjunction, namely so. And if you go back to the early episodes, you'll hear so. And one of the things she said was, you start a lot of sentences with so. So that was the first thing. And then the second thing, and this has been something that I've really carried beyond radio, is kind of those in-between sentence sounds that we make. And my favorite one is I just did it. I've learned to minimize those more. And those are some things that have happened. And that's some of and Felicia, thank you for that. There's been a little bit of training there, and it's been good. So Felicia, maybe you could talk a little bit now just about, and like I said, the lesson I learned, and in this photo, you also have a student, a journalism major, her name's Randy Cross, and she actually has joined the show as a host. She joined in the second year. And just the combination that we have, me kind of being the president, asking my questions, driving the show, Felicia kind of takes on the lens of maybe I don't know everything about community college, so I'll ask this question. And then Randy, with her journalism background, comes in with these really short, concise, great questions. And it's kind of been something where, at least from my side, I've been learning, and I've always tried to be willing to learn, which has been my second question. Now, beyond that, though, I do want to go ahead and hand this over to Felicia at this point, just to talk about being on air. And maybe some of you here might be interested in doing some stuff with radio. So I'll turn it over to you.
Well, just kind of dovetailing on what Rudy has already said. It's important when you're on the air just to have a conversation and think of it in terms of, what do you want to hear? So I'm always asking the questions that I'm curious to find the answer to, and also thinking someone else might be interested in it as well. Then when you're talking on the radio, you try not to be too self-conscious about what you're saying, and especially since there's a video element to what we're doing as well, try just to be natural when you're on camera. Because I noticed there's a radio side and there's a video side, and my radio side has a tendency to over gesticulate when I'm talking so that I can make sure that people understand what I'm saying. So, but it doesn't look good on video. So it's just good to be conscious of, what medium you are in. And again, just be natural and calm. And if you find the need to say and even so, the best thing to substitute is a breath. Those work perfectly. And just enjoy yourself while you're doing it.
And just on the slide, KGPC, they've been very open to folks in the district who want to do things on air. Chelsea, I know with ESOL. Could you talk a little bit about what's going on with that?
Yeah. My students, they thought to come up with a radio show idea, 5 to 10 minutes. And this was the last part of the semester. So they had about a month to work on it, but they were really jazzed. And at the end of the semester, it can be a time where people are running on fumes, but it really invigorated them. So we visited Peralta Radio, we met with Felicia, we got tips, lots of tips like you were just all talking about for how to do it. And then they went ahead and went on air with her for their final. So you can find their presentations there. And they went live, Felicia set it up, so they went live twice. And then they were able to share the website also broadly with their communities. And it was wonderful. Thank you, Felicia. It was such a wonderful partnership.
It was a very
So
fun experience.
if you are listening today and you're interested in maybe pushing something out there, and we do try to go, my show, we pretty much try to go every week during the instructional year. But the frequency can be less.
Yes, it could be once a month. It could be every 2 weeks. If you're feeling bold and aggressive, it could be every week, but
I guess I'm bold.
yes, very much so, but I'm all right, I'm loving it. But you can also just do it every quarter. I mean, just however it fits in on your schedule. I actually have some setups for folks who are interested in creating their own podcast, some general tips. And then you can think about maybe pitching your show to the station if you're interested in doing that. But if you ever want to start your own podcast, you got to think of a concept. And also, when I say that, look at your favorite podcast and pick some of the elements that you like from your favorite, but also think as an outlier, what can I do to set myself apart from all the other podcasts? Because what's the point if you're going to sound like everyone else? You got to come up with something that's going to make you different. And that takes me to the second point is what type of format? Do you want to have it formal, informal? Do you want it on the spot, outside, in the field? How do you want it? Where do you want it to be? How do you want it? How do you want the format? Is it questions and answers? Is it just you sharing information? It's depending on however you want to put your show together. Then what kind of equipment? Where are you going to record? If you pitch at KGPC, you can definitely record at the station, but also you can record it in your home office, in your kitchen, in your living room. It just depends. In a coffee shop, wherever you want, and just make sure that there are certain equipment that you need for each of these locales. So you have to be conscious of the equipment you need. Then produce your show. And that means this is where the hard work comes in, because you're setting up how you want it formatted. Now you got to pick out a guest and so forth. Then this is the easy and the hard part is editing. And I tell everybody, and no one believes me, for every minute of sound, you have 15 minutes of editing. And you don't think that's the case, but it really is. It takes quite a bit of time because it's very tedious, because you're trying to make the cadence equal throughout the entire broadcast. And you're also editing out little glitches, maybe errant sounds are in the back and so forth. So it takes some time. Now that you have it all edited and mixed together, you got to have a platform for it. Where are you gonna play it? Is it gonna go on YouTube? Is it gonna go on Apple? And then lastly, you gotta promote yourself. You gotta let people know that you have a podcast and be on social media. Be in places where people can see and know that you have a podcast. Then with that, all it is see how successful that you can make your endeavor.
Just a couple things, and then maybe we can open it up for a second. First of all, what I'll say is that, and on the last slide, I've actually got the name of an app that you can use to do podcasting from your cell phone, and it's free. I'll be sharing that. The name isn't with me right now, but I have some friends who do a baseball podcast. And they
just on the phone. Huh?
Yeah, just they use their phone and that's it.
Amazing.
But the other thing, and as we move forward, I'm hoping that more of my guests take advantage of this. I always want my episodes to be considered my guests' episodes or Laney's or Peralta's episodes. And one of the things that you can do, and I know we've got media people in the room, so hi Marla. One of the things you can do with a recorded video is you can use this very format, Zoom, and record a video with the effects. Then you download it as an MP4 file on your computer. And then you can go in and cut things out. And if anybody ever wants to learn how to do it, I have probably fallen and gotten up so many times doing it myself that I'd be glad to show you. That's something that's good. Second thing is, in terms of social media, the two that I've used that I can track how our shows do are LinkedIn, because it tells the number of impressions. And then number two, Instagram, I discovered that on original posts, you can see how many people have looked at your post. So now, does that say that people are listening to all 60 minutes? No, but it does say that there's, that people are paying attention to what you're doing. Okay, so who actually has been listening to the show? First of all, we have Oakland FM radio where it airs, and how's it been doing when it's on?
It does pretty good. So on average, we get about impressions, I'd say about 250 on the day it airs, but then it picks up steam as the month goes on.
Yeah, and even
Get up to-
I won't say what, but my most viewed podcast or my most listened to podcast is now close to 1,000 impressions on LinkedIn.
Wow.
Yeah,
Look at that.
so it's a lot. So a lot of people like to stream their content and listen to it when they want. KGPC969.org.
That's why we get the most traction is people finding the time and going and listening.
So I don't know if anybody knows Shamila Johnson, Adult Education. She was our first guest when we did simulcast. Shamila Johnson and Ann Gonzalez came on. And from that point, we air on channels 27 and 28 on cable television in Oakland, depending on where you live. So what was interesting is one day I went to the Sierra Market over in Jack London for a sandwich. And the person who was making my sandwich just was kind of looking at me a little funny. And then suddenly said, "Oh, you're on TV. My grandma loves you."
That's funny.
So apparently people are watching on cable. Yeah, so there was that. And then also around Peralta, I do have a number of colleagues who come up to me and say, "Hey, I like the podcast," or "I've heard a little bit of it." And actually, during one of our small talk times, we talked about what's a delicacy that people have tried that maybe nobody has. And one thing I shared was that when I lived in Japan, I actually tried chicken sashimi, raw chicken.
No.
Yeah, I tried that out, Keith. And so our food services manager, when he came on the show, he announced to our audience that on his bucket list was to try raw chicken. And I said, "Oh, okay, people around Peralta are listening too. That's good."
Oh,
It's been unbelievable. In my job, I tend to interact quite a bit with other presidents around the state. I go to conferences, but I also talk to colleagues. And it has happened more than once when I introduce myself, I get, "Oh, you have a podcast, don't you?" Like from people in Southern California, from Lake Tahoe College, things like that. People are listening around the state. I mentioned LinkedIn and Instagram. Now, the one that's been a challenge for me has been YouTube. People do watch the videos when I upload to my YouTube channel. However, anybody want to guess how many subscribers I have? 14. 14. And I was stuck on 13 for about 7 months, but thank you. One of my guests, who I'll talk about in a few minutes, actually advised us once during a show, just keep your YouTube content constant. Constantly upload stuff, you'll get more subscribers. So that's kind of our next frontier.
yeah.
Way back on slide 2, I kind of talked about the things that have kind of been the lasting characteristics, but some things that I found, other things that are keys. Number one, I mentioned that we have a template script, but it is very much semi-structured, meaning that if we don't get to all the questions, that's okay. Sometimes we'll cover all of them and more. Atiya Rashada was once on the show to talk about student life and activities. I prepared 14 questions. We talked about 2 of them. And that was it. We just covered 2 and we didn't even go anywhere else. Like I said, this is not investigative journalism. This is very much an informative show spotlighting our guests. Really, I think understanding who you are as a show or as a podcast is important. Because when the microphones are on and you're recording and things, if you're comfortable in your element where you are, that's good. Now, the one thing, and I'll get to the one thing in a minute. Going to the second to last bullet point, though, the time I find the greatest, and I don't know, Felicia, if you think so, is I kind of hang around after the show. She probably wants to get rid of me sometimes, but I'll hang around and talk about it. And, you know, this was good, this wasn't good. And we've never had like a full-on hour-and-a-half meeting to talk about the show. I don't think we ever have, but that 5 minutes afterward has been gold to me. So it's just one of those things in the moment, what worked, what didn't, and we typically do it after the guest has left. That's typically how it works. I talked about Instagram and LinkedIn and who's watching and things. One trend I found is that when students are on the show, and you'll notice an episode here where Sydney Thomas from Cosmo brought 4 of her students, those have the largest audience in terms of response. If I want to have students, if I want to have good numbers, I'll get a student on the show. That happens. Also, another big thing that gets lots of attention is the remote broadcast. We've done a bunch of them where we left the studio. Felicia has a setup with mics and we find a place and we do it. And I've got a trivia page and I'll talk about those in a minute. One of the things I do that's become a regular part of the show and is called Partners of Laney. As for those of you who maybe know a little less about Laney College, essentially 6 in 10 of our programs are career education. And of course, students finishing a career education program need a job. So what we do is, and Raya Zion's been big about this, she always sends me names of employers that are hiring our students, and I say the names of those companies on the air to give them a shout out. And typically some sort of communication goes to them that they were mentioned. It's a little bit of stewardship, you know, just to kind of maintain relationships. And then, like I mentioned before, I kind of bring in the college president persona, someone who runs a college. But Felicia comes in, and I know I talked to you as kind of that outside person. Hey, what is that? What does SLO mean?
Right, yeah.
But is there anything else with your perspective that you bring?
For me, it's just things that I'm curious about that I don't know. I certainly don't know the ins and outs of certain classes or whatever. So out of my own curiosity, that's what I'm bringing.
Yeah. Yeah, and then I really think also the piece that Randy brings in with the journalism background, that also really adds. I mentioned the 5-minute debrief, and then again, one of the things that we really want is that the episodes really belong to the people that are on the show. And so, for example, Eren was on, and what I hope someday is that you'll record it and you use portions of that audio, for example, on your webpage, just to promote ESOL or the center or any of those things. So really, if I ever say my show, I always have to catch myself because it's inaccurate. Yeah. The big lesson from this is just always be open to new ideas when it comes to things. Always, one of the things I've always said to myself is that by myself, I am not capable of a great idea. I can have good ideas, but they become great when I involve other people. That's always been kind of one of my little things that I always say. And this picture here is actually our very first remote broadcast, which was with the Speech, Communication, and Leadership Club when they had an event on campus. All right, let's get to some trivia. People online, feel free to unmute your mics. Yeah, even if you've got a dog or cat in the background running around, that's okay. We're going to do a little bit of trivia here. So we've done 4 remote broadcasts. Where did we go? Does anybody know any of them? Chantal, I think you probably know one of them. Oh, maybe she's off.
Culinary?
Yeah, we went to the bistro. We did one for the Speech and Communications Club, Leadership Club. We actually did one from the lobby of the theater. We borrowed the Laney College Career Community Center for Veterans Day. And then we won an award for this broadcast. We went to the Veterans Center 2 years ago and did, and we won a statewide award for that episode.
Yeah.
All right. First Peralta guess, Laney College employee. Does anybody want to take a guess who it was? On the 7th floor of the tower. A dean. Career education. Yeah, Ali Tomas was our very first colleague guest, very first one, yeah. Yep, and our first student guest was a writer for the Peralta Citizen. And I think she was also the salutatorian, so. All right, this one might surprise you, the most viewed episodes on YouTube. There's first and second, and then third place is way behind. So the most viewed one was David Johnson, president of Merritt College. And I've had him on, he's actually been, between this and other shows I've done, he's been on like 5 times. And then John Beam was second. And he was like episode number 5 or 6. It was early on, yeah. We actually did have someone out of state, outside of education, join us once. One of the people that I've gotten some influence from, her name is Janda Lane. She is a disc jockey, FM disc jockey in Chicago. And she does a 10-minute podcast called Behind the Song, where she takes one song and digs into the lyrics and the story behind it. We had her on, and she actually nominated for a Marconi Award. Yeah, and I was really pleased that she joined us and was very knowledgeable.
So what's a Marconi?
That is a broadcasting, yeah. But by the way, that's what Felicia just did when we do our show. A Marconi Award, if it were the movies, it would be an Oscar, but for radio, it's Marconi.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, Janda Lane is her name. We had one episode that was a roundtable. This one was actually heard around the state.
For the students?
The 4 Peralta presidents. Yeah, Felicia essentially moderated. Yeah, it was good. Let's see, besides our regular guests, David Johnson, but anybody want to guess who else has been on the show a lot? And he keeps asking me to keep coming back on. Antoine Maywale.
Oh.
Yeah, Antoine loves being on the air. Yeah, so yeah, it's Antoine has been one of our most regular guests. And when he was here, Angel Fuentes actually used to come on a lot because he loved to talk about Felicia's favorite topic, which is
Artificial intelligence.
artificial intelligence. Yeah. It's from the movie The Wall. The song is called Run Like Hell from Pink Floyd. Yeah. So that's one of the things. Find something that, it just every time, since your positive energy is what drives the show, find something that makes you smile.
Yeah.
And that show that song always seems to get my engine going. So I don't know. Anyway, and then we close it with this song. And you can just name the movie.
Chariots of Fire.
That's right. I'll leave it on so people can hear it. The theme from Chariots of Fire ends the show. And it's not necessarily my favorite song, but until I was about 30, I was a long distance runner. And so that's just kind of my little thing that makes me smile there as well. Like I said, when you have a show in a loose format with a template and things, have things that happen during the show that you do regularly. At the halfway point, I always like to let my guests kind of take a breath. And the 2 organizations that I promote on my show are the foundation to promote the donations. And then also our Laney College's Employment Services Office. As I mentioned, we mentioned employers in the air, on the air that give to things. Okay, so just kind of to close out the presentation portion of this. If you want to get involved, the email for the station is right there. It's kgpc969@gmail.org. If you want to be on the president's desk, definitely, we're always out looking for guests and things. Judy May in my office really lines up the calendar and everything. with pretty much just because Felicia's and the radio station schedule is full. How many shows do you have?
30?
Yeah, 30 shows. We pretty much always record on Wednesdays during college hour. That's when it is. We put both our emails here if you need to contact us. And then the app that I mentioned, if you want to just do podcasting on your own, on your phone, is Mic'd Up. And it's free. So lots of people to thank for the work that's been done. Most of all, Felicia, especially at the point where I was on my own wondering what I was going to do. Mark Johnson, the Office of Public Relations, without their support, this would not have happened. Early on in the show, just as Judy books guests now, Arlene did it for me, and often at the remote episodes would come and grab people in the quad to come and be on the radio. When Elena Sanchez was with us, she also did that. Raya Zion really brings the industry partner part to our show. Of course, Lorena, she's really the founding mother of the podcast. Janda Lane, really a lot of what I do just based on hearing her style and either copying or doing something different. KGPC, a lot of student employees come in and operate the boards, and of course, Peralta TV. So I just want to highlight a couple people that are with us and just see if they want to say anything. E, I know you were on the program. You're welcome to come up on camera if you want.
Okay.
Could you tell us about the experience?
It was very heartfelt. I think I really connected with all of you on a personal level. Like, I feel like people, like all of you were interested in my life, and you guys asked some great questions about the work I do, my past experiences, and like me as a person, as an educator, and things like that. It was a great experience.
Excellent. Ramona, are you still with us?
Great conversation.
Yes, I'm here.
Could you tell us about your experience being on the president's desk?
Oh my gosh, I was scared because I've never been that I can remember on a radio broadcast like that. But everyone made me feel so at ease. And by the time I was on the air, actual air, I think I was talking too much. But it was a great experience. I think anyone and everyone should really consider, going on radio. It would be nice. Yeah.
Ramona, I don't know if you were I mean, this has happened like 3 or 4 times where somebody comes on, they're a little bit apprehensive. We do the 30 minutes or the hour, and then at the end, like, can we keep going? This is great. Yeah. Yeah. I thought, exactly. And then Chantal, I know you're busy getting ready for the beginning of the semester, but I know you were on the program and you were someone who just grabbed that mic and did a great job. Can you share a little bit?
I don't know about that. You did a great job. I'm just going to echo what Ramona said because I was also pretty apprehensive about being on the show. I have no experience doing things like that. But you asked really great questions, and I mean, as a team, you guys are just fabulous. So you made everyone feel really at ease. And like you said, at the end, I think all of us were like, we just kept going. And so
Yeah.
it's like having a great time with friends, talking and also at the same time sharing information that I think the public very interesting, I think. And it was just a great time. Very good questions though, Rudy, I have to say.
Well, and I like that for the photo after the show, you all let me wear the chef's hat. That was,
Yeah,
that was
but I had no idea it was videotaped.
Yeah, it was.
I've never seen it actually. Yeah.
There's one floating around, so
Yeah.
we'll I'll upload it so you'll have an opportunity to see it.
Excellent.
Well, anyway, but 15 minutes for every minute, that's incredible. And I completely believe it, but it's something that, the end product is so seamless. And I guess that's the measure of excellent work, is that you don't see the work that actually goes into it.
It works, yeah.
It's just pure fun at the end.
Well, one thing also that Felicia does that's great is, and I don't know how many times you've done this, just I think one time we had like the track and cross country coach on. It was either that or the sports show we did for a little while. And there are certain points that like each quarter mark of the show, you do station identification. And then after that, she always plays some filler music. And like she'll always pick a theme that goes with it. So Jan Delane from Chicago, when she was on, she said her favorite singer was Bowie, David Bowie. And so all of the fill music for that episode was David Bowie music. And then when the track coach was on, I think you had Tom Petty's Running Down a Dream, you know, so yeah, that's something she does that's great. Colleagues, this has been fun. I wish we could keep going, just like during the show. Any other thoughts, comments, questions? And the only bad question or comment is the one you don't ask or make.
Thank you so much. I think it was really inspiring and encouraging for people like me who has a podcasting idea for a long time, but still could not put it in like to practice. So oh, thank you, Felicia. But I was just gonna ask you, like, I wrote down actually some of the tips you shared. It was really helpful. For example, when you said like think of a concept and then think about what makes it unique and think about the format and the audience and all other things, which I think I already have in mind. But I was just gonna ask you, how much work is it to have your own podcasting channel? Like, I mean, it doesn't have to be like, really professional, but what I had in mind is I'm really passionate about culturally responsive teaching, but I also feel like on the academic side of it, like people publish things and other publishers read it, authors, and then they publish something. So we create some kind of like a bubble, which is not accessible for everyone because not everyone reads academic articles, right? So I was just thinking maybe, as you said, like lesson one is like empowering people. So how can we make some of the information going on in academia more accessible and more jargon free for people so that they can put them in practice in their teaching, in their pedagogy? So that was my passion. But again, as I said, I said, oh, podcasting is really hard. I can't do it. I can't get it started. But do you have any tips or suggestions for people who would like to get started with it?
I have a couple, and I mentioned you probably do too, but actually, go ahead.
Oh, I'm just thinking whenever you want to just think, start a podcast, don't think, oh, I have to fill up an hour or I have to fill up a half an hour. However much time that you think it takes to cover in a particular topic, just take that time. So it could be 5 minutes, it could be 15 minutes. And eventually it'll grow into the format that you want. So just do it, just little bits and pieces.
So I'll give you the non-expert practitioner response. A couple of things. DDEM, I definitely play a role when I do it. I say to myself, okay, I'm the college president. I'm talking to somebody about my college. Even if I know stuff, I try to ask as if I'm from a distance. And often 20 to 30% of the questions I ask, I already know the answer. So that's the first thing. The second thing I would say is you have to, and this is really important, the questions you prepare are great, but the greater questions are the emergent ones during the interview. And a couple of things that I've learned, and I listened to Dan Patrick, who used to do Sports Center on ESPN. He appeared on this show and talked about interviewing people. And one of the things he said was, ask your question and shut up. I mean, just ask your question. And the trap that I was falling into a lot early was I'd ask my question and then I would re-ask it. And essentially what happens is I'm grabbing the steering wheel too much and taking the voice away from my subject. And then the other one, and this is such an easy one, and we often do this just to make people feel comfortable, is you ask them a question and then you start answering it without realizing you did it. So those are some things that kind of ask your question and then be quiet. That's something that in doing that, what happens is you kind of step away from that academic a little bit and become an interested audience. And on the air, you absolutely need that element. At least that's what I found.
Wow, thank you so much. This is really helpful.
Okay. All right. Thank you all, colleagues.